I saw it this morning, and I'm like, yo, there's no way that they did all this just for. You're gonna see
the polls around this decision. Steve Kornacki, MSNBC national political correspondent, has been looking at the polling that was staring President Biden in the face heading into this decision, but also the bits and pieces of polling that we've got about how a presidential candidacy of Kamala Harris might look a little different in the polling than what President Biden was up against head-to-head with Trump. Steve, what have you been looking at today?
Yeah, I guess a couple of things, Rachel. Let's call it up and look at it this way. First of all, we've just been tracking. This is an average of all of the polls nationally that have been conducted since that debate at the end of June that set all of this in motion. So nationally, the average had Biden running 2 points behind Trump. Now, a couple things to say about that. First of all, of course, we know that back in 2020, when Biden defeated Trump, never in 2020 did Trump ever lead Biden in the polling average. Biden led it from start to finish that year. This time around, here's Trump leading Biden in a polling average. And frankly, we've seen this for a long time now. It was the end of last summer, the end of the summer of 2023, in our poll, our NBC poll, that for the first time, Donald Trump drew level with Joe Biden, and he pulled ahead of him. And he's been there in our poll and many other polls since then. So in some ways, looking at these numbers since the debate, just as a lot of Democrats, I think, kind of looked up in that debate and said, whoa, Biden, not quite what we expected in terms of his public performance. You certainly heard Democrats making comments like that. I think one of the things that happened was that the numbers didn't change dramatically from that debate. The polling numbers did not change dramatically, at least nationally. But I think a lot of Democrats also looked at them almost for the first time in a year and started to take them a lot more seriously, because we've been seeing numbers like this for a year or so now in the polls. Now, they did get a little bit worse for Biden nationally, and we do have swing state polling. We've seen a number of swing state polls where Biden's down mid-single digits, somewhere he's down high single digits. So, there's that as well, certainly, that complicates the path to 270. When you see that the article there saying the path is gone, I would just caution, it will forever be unprovable, and that's always going to be a...
No, the path is gone. It's gone. It's gone. I know that people want to be like, nah, there's always a chance. Yeah, if your candidate can finish a sentence, if your candidate can remember his name, maybe, even if they didn't have those options, maybe once again, if Kamala was worth the damn, like you could have ranked, because that would have been an awesome selling point. Like, oh man, if something happens with Biden, like, we got Kamala. And everybody would galvanize behind that. But no, y'all have tried everything. If you are behind at a point in the presidential election, after you've plastered your candidate, your adversary's face on felony posters, okay? After you've conspired to impeach him, you call him every name under the sun except for a child of God, and you are still behind. And this is a favorable average of liberal polling. You were not going to come back after this man just almost got assassinated and survived, and his party has now just decided to fully galvanize behind him. It wasn't going to happen, bro. And it might not even be necessarily because of how many people are going to vote for Trump, but it's because of specifically how many people are not going to vote for you. But hey, in this guy's mind, there was a chance, I guess.
Subjective statement there, the path was gone. Just as a reference point, I think always remember, in the middle of October 2016, the entire political world, including Donald Trump's own party, concluded that his path to the presidency was, quote, gone, and Donald Trump won in 2016. And I think there might be some lessons.
Also, we should probably remind him that, no, the entire political world didn't say that. In fact, a lot of us I was one of the few leftists that was very clear. I'm like, Hillary Clinton's not campaigning. She's not popular. These polls are wrong. And I was not just explaining how we couldn't use polls to determine the outcome of 2016 because polls are just corrupt. No, I was showing like the methodology that was being used didn't make any sense. Anybody who was a legitimate political scientist who did analysis of the polls that were being used to push this idea that Hillary Clinton's path to victory in 2016 was just overwhelmingly favorable, that they just decided not to do the work. I don't know. If the polls had legitimate methodology, then maybe you can make that argument. But we were like, no, what the hell? Trump is popular as hell. And I was watching Bernie supporters back then switch in real time over to Trump. And they just were ignoring it. But hey, that's what they say.
From that had Biden stayed in might have been worth considering, but that'll always be academic. We'll never know. It'll be unprovable. But anyway, that is what the national polling's been showing. So then the question for Democrats becomes, okay, if Kamala Harris does become the Democratic candidate, does that change things? So the same polls that produce this average since the debate in the Biden-Trump race, what do they show when Harris is substituted in? A difference, but it's a difference of a point. The Biden at 45, Harris in these same polls, an average 46%, Trump 47%.
Yeah. Imagine you finding out that, you're about to, there's going to be an attempt to make you the party nominee, right? You're younger, you're a woman of color. The way that the media pitches you oftentimes is like you're much more popular than the other guy. And then you find out from polling from a company that favors you, right? An institution that favors you, that the world, the country, the people who are doing these polls think that you are only 1% better than the motherfucker who just had to leave because he has dementia. Bruh. They wouldn't have to ask me to quit. They wouldn't have to nominate somebody else. I would choose to quit. I would literally make it. If the world right now, they just watched Biden have the worst debate performance in the history of presidential debates. That is not even hyperbole. That is not hyperbole. That is according to MSNBC and CNN and their posters. They just watched this man have a mental breakdown in front of the whole world, slowly. More, because he's been having it for 2-3 years, but it has happened more rapidly in the last 2 weeks than maybe we've ever seen it. And maybe that's because he's had more public outings. But even after witnessing all that, the country decided you are 1% better than the guy who just had to leave because he has dementia and Parkinson's. That's nuts. I would take the hint, but
in both of them. So you look at this, and Kamala Harris is not entering, at least in the head-to-head standpoint, with an obvious strength over Joe Biden, nor with an obvious weakness compared to Joe Biden. Really, those numbers are pretty close.
Well, there's definitely an obvious weakness compared to Joe Biden. Wouldn't y'all agree? Wouldn't y'all agree that there is an obvious weakness compared to Joe Biden if you are only 1% better than the dementia candidate? You're 1% better. That is a weakness. I hope that when anybody is looking at my resume, if I'm applying for a job and they hold up two of my resumes together and then somebody has signs of dementia on their resume and then just everything else that I've done, good and bad, I would hope that, well, damn, man, at least dude don't have dementia, will put me at least a solid 4 or 5 points ahead of the guy who has dementia. This is crazy. She's like, there's no significance. It's not really a big problem. No, it's kind of a big problem. It's a little bit.
Close to the same in terms of a starting point for Harris. Also, just the basic impression of these folks. So Joe Biden, this is the average when you ask that question. Do you have a favorable, unfavorable view? Biden, 36, 57, been seeing numbers like this for a long time with him. Obviously, these are very perilous numbers. What are they for Kamala Harris? Average from the same set of polls? little bit better. 36 goes up to 38. 57 comes down to 52. But, take a step back. Those are not strong numbers. She hasn't entered the race with strong numbers on that basic question. What's the comparison to Donald Trump here? Trump averaging 41 favorable, 55 unfavorable. Also not strong numbers. A tick, though, above where both Biden and Harris are. Again.
So my point is, it's not looking good. That was just not a smart plan. And I'm going to be completely and totally honest with y'all. People are under the impression that she's going to be the nominee. Do I believe that she's going to be the presumptive nominee up into the convention? Yeah. But that's because they got to play that game. They have to. They have no choice. Because they effectively didn't do a primary. They didn't do one. I mean, yeah, there technically were ballots cast and people technically went out to vote. And Biden actually technically lost a precinct in Michigan. So, that was probably a big deal. But, me and Kamala, guys, we got the same amount of votes this year during the Democratic primary. Did y'all know that? We got the same amount of votes. I'm quite proud of that. I feel like that's a bragging point. Because we both got 0. Both of us. Me and Kamala are equally viable. Democracy has, according to the rules of democracy, because that's what the Democrats believe in, allegedly. We are equally viable in the eyes of the voters because we both got the exact same amount of fucking votes in the Democratic primary. Except for I don't have a history where I was forced to leave the race early the last election because people decided they hate me. That's the difference between her 0 votes and my 0 votes. Her 0 votes is a little bit different than my 0 votes. I'm just saying. I'm gonna be real. Italian Stallion. They could do the funny business in the election like in the past, wording it this way to avoid censors. Good job. And give her the win. They're already gaslighting that black community loves her. They've been gaslighting that the black community loves her since last election. And don't forget what happened by the end of it. If you all recall, let me see if I can pull up this. Oh, I might have in my bookmarks. I'm gonna see if I can pull this up for y'all because it's kind of important. Everybody forgets these things, but I don't forget. Oh yeah, I have it in my bookmarks. So after that little tussle, and by tussle I mean after Tulsi Gabbard basically ended Kamala's PR career forever with the debate, Kamala's support amongst black people never recovered. Because by the start of the week, she had like 90+% of black support. By the end of the week, this is what it looked like. She had 1% of black support by the end of that week. 1%. The fake Indian. Pocahontas. Okay? She had more black support than Kamala Harris, guys. So they can gaslight all they want to, but I'm just keeping it in a band. Like they're going to AstroTurf the hell out of Kamala on Twitter, on Facebook and YouTube. They're going to do that. But I'm just specifically using Twitter and TikTok as an example because that's where they AstroTurf the most in my experiences. Nobody is voting for her. Nobody is voting for her. I mean, yeah, there are going to be some people that vote for her if she gets it, but like the great majority, the vast majority of black voters are not voting for her. That's just reality. And I'm gonna go into it in a second, explain why, because it's not like they're just making stuff up. But if you're going to rig an election, you have to do it this is somebody who's, I would consider myself somewhat of an election integrity expert, given my history and experience. You have to do it precinct to precinct, and you have to do it state to state. And to make it work, there has to be a level of collaborative effort and collaborative info to make people believe you. That is why name recognition is such a big deal. It's not only because it genuinely does help you, but it's because in order for you to avoid being challenged and then people taking that challenge legitimately, it helps for you to have the popularity behind your name because it makes people scared to challenge the outcome. Kamala doesn't have that network. She has a little bit of name recognition, but not in any way positive, right? She doesn't have the power, the network of power and influence that Biden had, that Hillary had. And she's nowhere near as popular as Donald Trump. So they might do funny business if Kamala gets the nomination, but they're not going to get the last laugh just because they engage in some funny business. Like I said, it does often come down to who cheats the best. But oftentimes, if the other candidate is so much overwhelmingly popular, then it doesn't matter because of just how much. That's why I said, as far as JD Vance is concerned, it didn't make all that much sense to me. Now, it does make a lot more sense to me now why he picked him. But as far as just pure electoral strategy is concerned, we're not going to talk about the Vanguard connection and the Peter Thiel connection and all that good stuff. Get that. That's a different conversation. But as far as just strictly electoral strategy, getting JD Vance in Ohio is a genius strategy for a state that you absolutely need to win, because it makes sure that you have somebody who is networked into the roots of that electoral system to ensure that nothing goes south in the areas where Trump needs to win the most, right? And it gives him, and if you're a senator, you've already had to win that state before. It's different than a congressperson, like a representative, for example, who only has to win a district. A senator, you have to win that state, and you have to win it in the primary, and you have to win it in the general. So, all right, well, Laura said, why aren't we assuming these polls are fictional? They don't reflect reality. Oh, nah, I never said that. We know for a damn fact these polls are fictional. But that's my point. In the fictional, I always show the polls that are quote unquote favorable or from favorable networks or institutions when it comes to the Democrats or Republicans. The reason why is because if the polls that are usually giving you the benefit of the doubt are saying that you're losing, that's a big ass clue that you might be in some deep shit. You get what I'm saying? You're right. It doesn't reflect reality. In reality, Trump is probably far more popular. The gap between Kamala and Trump is probably far greater. I would say that the gap between Biden and Kamala probably isn't that big. I feel like that part is probably true. But the gap between Kamala and Trump is probably huge.